Okay, so the NRLW Grand Final has just finished between the Sydney Roosters and the Brisbane Broncos. And the Sydney Roosters went the whole regular season unbeaten. In fact, their unbeaten streak goes back to last year. They lost their regular season game quite early on in the season, and they finally lost. It took 18 games. The Broncos have won 22 points to 18. The Brisbane Broncos were 12-0 up at half time. And the beginning of the second half is crazy. In fact, the whole second half is absolutely insane with the momentum swings and the fact the Broncos actually at one point looked like they were getting blown out in the second half. They come back into it. There are two disallowed tries. I think both disallowed tries are massive momentum swings. Massive, massive momentum swings. There's a couple of injuries in there. You're looking at the second half right at the end. You're looking at the Roosters. Are they going to have any fit players left to complete the game? Because there's, head injuries and ankle injuries and players on the floor. And then at full time, it does end up in a little bit of a flare up at full time. A nice little bit of handbags at the end to end the game. You can see the frustration built with between both sides. I think there was a bit of niggle in the game. I do think that. But looking at the game itself, and you can see how rugby league is different to rugby union in regards to accidental head clashes. And I'm going to talk about that because halfway through the first half is where we get our first major momentum swing. The first, 15, 16 minutes has been an arm wrestle. I think we can all agree that. And neither side's fully gained that territory and possession advantage. They're both pretty evenly in the arm wrestle. I could say the Brisbane Broncos probably slightly edging it over the Roosters, but for the most part it is a closely contested game. And then there's an up and under kick, and Bryony Parker knocks it on into Robbie Tyson, who knocks it on, but there's a head clash. Now, Hayley Maddox would score the try that would be disallowed, and it goes to review. Now, if that's the rugby union equivalent, let's say the World Cup final, which obviously was a few days ago, Robbie Tysel's spending some time in the sin bin for an accidental head clash. As I say, I've got my views on how both rugby league and rugby union, for example, deal with head contact. You're not going to take it out of the game. I did find it surprising that only Bryony Parker has to go for an HIA and not Robbie Teitzel, even though both players are split open. And there's quite a bit of claret. And Teitzel's chin looks like it's got a second mouth in it, because under here is just a mass. It's a tasty one if you look close enough. There's a fair bit of claret coming out of that chin. It's quite a bad cut, but she stays on the field. Now, the try is disallowed because there's a double knock on in there, which is the correct decision. The resulting scrum, however, Tamika Upton scores the try on 18 minutes, and it's off first phase ball, and it's a good set play. They've worked out a way to, when they number up, to do it in a way where the receiver, in this case Upton, takes that extra step, gives herself, the receiver, an extra bit of space, and it confuses both defenders because now who's picking up the ball? Receiver. One's drifting out, one's got to stay tight. There's a gap, and she's through the gap, and neither half-back or centre can tackle the player. It's a set move. First phase, very disappointing for the Roosters on a defensive standpoint there, and that's the momentum swing in the first half. Now, Teitzel would convert, and then 10 minutes later, Jada Ferguson gets a try in 29 minutes, and Teitzel converts again. And basically, these two tries, plus a lot of other play in between with line breaks and physicality, the Broncos are winning the first half at this point. Not only that, they're winning the game. Kind of obvious because they're 12-0 up. But they won the arm wrestle, and the Roosters were not accurate. They get flustered, they're not accurate, they're silly errors, forcing passes, and they looked slower to everything. The Broncos looked that half a step faster. And whether the Broncos paced themselves, because at the beginning of the second half they're on the back foot, is another thing. But the Broncos look fresher, fitter, and just a bit more engaged in the game. Now, it's 12-0 at half time. I wouldn't say the first half is overly controversial, but I will say this. The Maddox, no try. Now, if that is in rugby union, as we've just seen with the Women's Rugby Union World Cup over here in England, that head clash, yes, Bryony Parker's going for the head injury assessment. You're looking at Robbie Teitzel going for 10 minutes, potentially 20 minutes, so a 10-minute sin bin or a 20-minute red card. And I think this is where rugby union and rugby league are a little bit different in regards to accidental head contact. You're not going to take it out of the game. You're not going to take it out the game at all. But I it's an interesting one how rugby union deals with it in the tackle area and rugby league deals with it in the tackle area. And we've seen inconsistency with both as well. But if that was in the Rugby Union World Cup we've just seen, and we did see a lot of this, we will see players going to the sin bin or getting sent off. In regards to rugby league, play on, it's a scrum. And you're not going to take head contact out of the game. I am surprised, though, that Romy Title did not go for an HIA. I'm also surprised in the second half. Several players didn't go for HIAs, especially Roosters players towards the end, because there was some egg-shaped and grapefruit-shaped lumps on the side of some Roosters players' heads towards the end of the second half. But 12 at half time. Second half, however, completely different story. The Roosters come out like a freight train and score 3 tries in 9 minutes to completely turn the game on its head, and the momentum has just swung one way. There was one point where the Broncos had one set of 6 in 10 minutes and didn't even complete that set. And that was the start of the second half. Bryony Parker, who's come back on, she's moved into the halves from the fullback position, ends up on the wing in a wide area, and the Roosters get round the Broncos' drift defence. Scores a try in 45 minutes. Kelleher converts. Lopamua, 52 minutes. Kelleher converts. And Mia Wood, 54 minutes. Kelleher converts. They just blitzed them. Parker, Lopamua and Wood in the space of 9 minutes have scored 3 tries. And they've gone from 12-0 down to 18-12 up. They've swung it. Not only have they swung it, that is a ridiculous swing in momentum. Now, they're pushing for a 4th try, and I think this is the moment where the grand final is won. Now, while Julia Robinson's breakaway try is ruled out because there's a knock-on in the tackle, it's the forced play that's unnecessary. The Roosters, while they've blitzed these first, let's have a look, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of that second half, they were still clunky in attack at times. And even though they've had this momentum swing and this energy, swing, where they just looked like they've done for the last 2 seasons, they still looked clunky in attack. Now, the Julia Robinson, she runs down the field, under the post, it's ruled out for a knock-on. But there's a forward pass in there from Keller, and it results in a resulting Broncos scrum. And after that, the momentum is with the Broncos again. Even though the Broncos take a while to score with Soasso's try, there's momentum again. And you could see that the Roosters looked clunky in attack. Now, is that because Taryn Aitken's out with an injury in the halves? Potentially. There were some other players out with injuries. Could that be a reason why the combinations weren't working as well? And why they looked a little bit clunky? But that no try is, for me, massive momentum swing again. Soasso gets a try in 61 minutes, and Hufunga's try. Now, this one I'm debating whether it actually did touch the grass or not. Was it held up? Soasso scores her try in 61 minutes. The Hufunga try, is that held up? Are replays conclusive enough, even though on the field they've given it? Are replays conclusive enough that ball touched the ground? Debates in the comments section, please, because I'm not sure that is conclusive enough. I don't know what angles they've seen up in the bunker, and the bunker regularly gets criticised by fans. But I was watching on the laptop on the NRL Watch NRL website because I'm outside of Australia. But those at home watching, and I will say this, and those who will rewatch the game later on, who may have missed the game, we only saw 2 replays, 2 angles. Now, what other angles do they see in the bunker to say that is definitely a try that's been scored? Because that didn't look very conclusive to me. It looks like the Roosters have held that one up. There's one angle where it looks potentially like the tip of the ball may have scraped the ground, but that's from a very far distance, and it's from behind. The real angle that we get to see, the close-up, shows Jasmine Strainer under the ball, holding it up. And for me, the ball hasn't touched the ground looking at that angle, but that's only 2 angles. So, debate in the comments section below. Now, they do also convert that one, which is crucial. There's 4 minutes remaining at that point. Now, in the build-up to this, there are players all over the ground, like with rather large lumps and bumps on their bodies. Again, not a single player goes for an HIA. And I look, you're not going to take accidental head clashes out the game, or bumps and bashes out the game. Head contact's going to happen. It's when it's deliberate head contact, that's when I think, yes, that's when players deserve to be sin binned and sent off and suspended and whatever. But at the same time, if you've got a lump like the size of a golf ball on your forehead, or your cheek looks like a grapefruit's just been slapped on there, and your face is swelling out, at some point we have to go, these players have to go for HIAs. There's potential for orbital fractures and cheek fractures. And look, what people will say, Sam Burgess played that grand final in 2014 with his face hanging off. Yeah, he did. And we can debate the pros and cons of that and the resulting health complications from that, the potential that he almost nearly went blind in that eye, had that cheekbone just moved slightly. We remember the Joey Manu incident with Latrell Mitchell, where he literally fractured his entire face, and then his face exploded within a few seconds with an air pocket. And again, he could have lost sight in that eye. And again, cheek and orbital fractures are actually quite dangerous. If that little bit of bone moves, you are in serious trouble. So, while the Brisbane Broncos have won 22 points to 18, I am asking questions about why some players didn't go for HIAs. If we are serious about, the welfare of players, especially in the women's game, where a lot of these players are part-time and actually have day jobs and are students and aren't full-time. There's some players that are on full-time contracts, but the game isn't fully professional. They're not earning a lot of money. And we're talking about playing welfare as well. Why aren't these players going off for HIAs? Regardless of the situation, why is the independent doctor going, yeah, you've got to go? Because Brigginshaw goes with about 30 seconds left when she's left on the floor. Now, whether she's milking or not is another thing, but you can see there's definitely a shoulder to her head. And out of all the head contacts in the game, 2 players go for HIAs, whereas about 3 or 4 players who should have gone, Keely Davis, like that golf ball, she can't even see out of that right eye. How? And you can see that swollen up, and you can see that there's it's a golf ball. It's like someone's stuck a golf ball and put glue around it. You could clearly see that is, well, the player's saying, I'm fine, I can't see, you're not fine. And there's a big debate about taking, the decision away from the players and independent doctors, but I think there should have been some HIAs in this game that haven't gone. And with the way that, considering I've just watched the Women's Rugby World Cup, where accidental head clashes, you're going to a sin bin, it makes me wonder in some of these situations about certain things. Now, did the Broncos deserve to win? They won the momentum swings, yes. Were they a better side on the day? I would say they edged it, yes. They looked more settled when they looked more dangerous in attack. Now, right at full time, it does end up in a little bit of a flare-up, with all the players, a bit of pushing and shoving and some words being exchanged at full time. I think frustrations boiled over. I do think there was a little bit of niggle in the game. I think there was a few late hits in the game. Did the referee have the best game? I don't think we're talking about the referee. I do think, though, that several players should have gone for HIAs. If we're being serious, because as I say, the women's game at the moment, the plan is to go fully professional in a couple of years. A lot of these players are part-time, they're students, they've got part-time job or full-time jobs. They dedicate a lot of time to this because they play for the love of the game. But at the same time, I do think we there's a duty of care there to take them for a head injury assessment. But there we go. In regards to the game itself, I think the 2 no tries are actually massive momentum swings. I do think the way that the Roosters started that second half like a freight train, they didn't pace themselves. They were playing desperate rugby. Although, I will say this, they were playing desperate footy, but they swing it. But then they weren't pacing themselves. And that leads to the Gio Robinson no try, which then leads to a momentum swing, and we end up with the Broncos finally ending the Roosters' unbeaten streak. Another interesting thing, the Roosters have never beaten the Broncos at ACCOR Stadium, and that sticks with me a little bit. Even though the Roosters and the head-to-head between the two teams is pretty even, the Roosters have never beaten the Broncos at the grand final venue, so that's an interesting one. It also is interesting that the Broncos, the lower-ranked team, well, in the men's game, the lower-ranked team is the Broncos against the Storm, so that's going to be really interesting to see if the Broncos can do a men and women's double. So the NRLW has gone to the Broncos. Will the NRL go to the Broncos? The NRLW Premiership, as I say, gone to the Broncos. Will the men be able to replicate it? I think the Broncos side that Madge Maguire has got the best opportunity since 2006, and we can argue 2015 and 2023 and how the teams played and how close both those Broncos sides were. But I actually think the Broncos team right now in the men's game that's going to be playing the Melbourne Storm in about an hour and a half's time from kick-off. I think this is the best chance the Broncos have to win a premiership. This could be their window. There's definitely talent in that team, and they've got some players leaving that team. This is their window with the squad they have. So we'll see what happens. But for me, for now, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on the game in the comment section below. Was Huafunga's try an actual try? That's one of those debates that will go on forever. And should we, as the TV audience at home, or the audience at home, get to see as many angles as the bunker does? Because we only saw 2 angles, and I don't think they're conclusive enough. I think there's enough grey area there. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.